Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts, and let's talk about the countdown to retirement and some things we need to think about and just have on the list, or at least be putting some thought to as we get closer to the magical day that is retirement. Once again, Phil's with me as always, talking about these things here on the program. What's going on, my friend? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Loving spring. I think we're finally getting there.
Yeah.
Speaking of, retirement. So.
Yeah, well, we're into May, right? And as I've said many times, Memorial Day is the unofficial kickoff to summer. And we start counting down the days to summer, right? We get to Memorial Day. We're kind of like, well, we kind of call it summer, even though it's like another 20 or so days away officially. But we're really kind of in that mindset. Well, I think if you start counting down days to retirement, Phil, kind of that same thing. And I've said many times, I feel like 50 is the unofficial wake-up call to retirement, right?
Yep.
We start thinking
get beyond some of the responsibilities with kids generally. And
we can save more money in the accounts. We got those catch-up contributions.
Now. Yeah.
We're going to talk about some of that stuff. So I got a few things here, a list of priorities maybe to keep in mind as we count down those days, to retirement, to the fun time. So get healthy, stay healthy. I just was having a conversation with another person on a podcast yesterday, actually, and he actually went through a cancer situation, got cancer. He's a doctor, actually, as a physician. He's like, look, I grew up, school, work. He's like, as a doctor, I was full.
This stuff, yeah.
Well, and he was just his lifestyle. He said basically he's thoroughly convinced that his lifestyle caused him to get cancer. And so he changed his life. He's like, look, as a doctor, I know better than to eat fast food or some of the stuff, but I was eating too much processed food. I was not getting enough sleep. I was super stressed and obsessed about my business and the growth and taking care of employees and all this stuff. And I think he's like, I'm convinced it made me sick. So his journey now is about being healthy and staying healthy. And he's early stages. He's not yet ready for retirement, but he did beat the cancer, which was great to hear. So getting healthy and staying healthy is a huge component to our retirement years.
Yes.
Especially if we want to have some longevity in them.
Yeah. I mean, health is one of the assets, if you want to think of it, that most of us overlook. We spend that asset working. All these years, putting your best years in. You don't want to lose the health as you get to retirement when you can actually enjoy some things that you saved for. So, it goes right along with retirement. Don't ignore your health. And as we age, it becomes more and more evident and obvious. When we're younger, we can get away with a lot of stuff because our bodies are much healthier, easier. They can combat all that bad habit activity that you've done versus you get to retirement, it all starts to catch up with you. You're in your 50s. I was just telling my wife the other day, it's like, okay, I got to start changing something because this isn't working anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, a lot of chronic health conditions start in our 50s. Yeah. I saw a really funny meme that said, at 12, you could fall off your bike, roll down a hill, hit 3 trees, smash your head on a rock, and next day you feel fine.
That's right.
Little exaggeratory, but we get the idea. And then the next part of it said, at 52, I sneezed and threw my back out.
Yep, exactly.
So it gets a little weird, right? So making fitness and diet and healthy living a part, and more people, and we've definitely seen that as a push over the last number of years, not even just through the pandemic, but really I think retirees have gotten better about realizing that, hey, we're eating better, we're taking care of better care of ourselves so we can enjoy retirement. So that should be probably first on your list as you're counting down those days.
Absolutely.
Second maybe should be, Phil, and this is probably one that you definitely see and have to talk people through. What are you going to do? What do you want to do with the time? And you and I have talked many times about retiring to something.
Yes.
Not from something. Don't run from the factory job that you hate. Go to something that you love because it will help that mind occupy time thing.
Yeah. And I run into this with clients all the time. In fact, I met with a client yesterday again that newly retired. He just retired end of the year.
Okay.
And asked him, how's things going? And I'm getting there. And, joy right now, it's kind of still like vacation, right? They've been on a long vacation, but it's getting to the point where, you got to start to fill up your time. So he started playing pickleball, got into a group at church that
I
plays
love pickleball, man.
I know I played it a couple of times, and it's fun, so
It's fun to
you've got to
say
have some
pickleball.
activities. Yeah, it's fun to say pickleball. And I'd be curious to see how they come up with that name.
I don't
but
know
that's a
who
whole
named
other
it, but it's
discussion.
great. Anyway,
But yeah, so have some plans of, what do you like to do? What's your hobbies?
Yeah.
What's on that bucket list, so to speak, that you've always wanted to do, making sure the budget's there, the finances are there to support that. But into that point too, I've had a lot of clients that will retire from their long-term career, kind of work their way into retirement, 6-9 months, a year later, they said, I'm going to go back to work somewhere.
Yeah.
And
And
it's not
that's three on my list
it's
as another career. Yeah.
Yeah, go work part-time at a golf course if you love to golf, get paid for doing what you like to do. And it gives you some social, the biggest piece of it generally is the social activity.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you love your wife, if you're married but you've not spent 24/7 together ever, probably, so all of a sudden you're both home together and you're like, okay, we got to find something to do because, you're in my way all the time.
Yep. Now you're reading my mind, because really 2 and 3 kind of all flow together along with that. It's like, what do you want to do with the free time? Do you want to post retirement? I don't know. Career is what we had listed, but I don't know if career is a good word. Just
it doesn't have to be a career.
It's time occupier. But that's a great point, because one thing the pandemic,
yes,
I think did teach us in a good way, hopefully anyway.
Yeah,
we can find a silver lining in all that mess, is that a lot of married couples got to see what maybe retirement was like. Because you're working from home maybe and my wife and I, same thing. She started working from home just before the pandemic started. I already did. But it was like, hey, you're infringing on my territory.
That's right.
I'm here all day.
I've been used to staying at home, and I had it to myself. And now, what are you doing here?
Yep. I used my buddy all the time whenever he had been retired military. Well, when the pandemic happened, his wife, she worked at a school, so she was out. Right. So he's like, hey, she's like always underfoot. Like, I can't get rid of her, and so they had to learn they had to adapt their relationship. And as many people had to,
That's absolutely, and whether it's a career or, some outside activity, and time together. But it's a funny story. I've got another couple that retired. It's been a couple of years ago now.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, they run into that a lot early on, and they had moved. So she loves to sew. So her sewing room is like on the second story. And then he used to work for a radio station and still does some voiceover work and writing commercials and that for a few private clients that he still works with. Well, he's got his studio in the basement. So, I mean, it's still, they're like going to work. She's going upstairs to her sewing room. He's going down to his studio. So they've got their own space in the house. So
that's great. I mean, my studio here is outside of the house, but it's, it's on the property, but so carving out that's really important as well in retirement, is carving out some activities away from one another. You can love your spouse all day long, but I think anybody been married long enough knows that it doesn't mean you don't love them. You just sometimes need to, have your own thing. So.
Well, and it's, I mean, you just have to understand your experience to this point, right? I mean, if
that's true.
You've been married 25, 30, 40 years, now retiring, you've never been together 24/7 ever. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe when you were 17, if you were lucky.
Yeah. I mean, if you were in high school or something, you spent a lot of time together, but still,
and even then you work because you lived in different houses. So,
So it's a totally different environment to just work through. Doesn't mean you don't love each other. It's just, okay.
Exactly.
Understand what their needs are, and separation and space is a need.
And I got to ask, because I get this from advisors all over the country when I talk to different people, how many times do you have that situation though, where like I hear advisors say the wife will look at you as the professional and go, get him out of the house.
Yeah, that's funny. I always joke around with my clients and say, okay, now we're going to have to put on my, my counseling hat, and that's a different rate when we do that. So
he's driving me insane. Get him out of my house. Yeah.
Yep. Find something for him to do.
Exactly.
We don't have enough. He's got to go back to work.
That's right. Number 4, we mentioned briefly, we'll just touch on it real fast. Just take advantage of those opportunities to save more. 50 plus, we're in that kind of golden, hopefully making big money and can save them.
Yeah, I mean, generally you're at the top part of your career. So, and you've, probably have kids through college, maybe done helping them, so you have some of these other obligations out of the way. So now you're not out of the way, but taken care of.
Right.
So now you have more resources to be able to accumulate quicker. And that's one of the reasons the IRS has put in some of those catch-up provisions, is they recognize and understand that, people maybe didn't have the resources or opportunity early on. So now you can catch up later. So
yeah, and we just had a podcast a couple of weeks ago about birthdays. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can go back and check that one out. It was retirement birthdays if you'd like to check that one out. And we talk about some different milestones at the retirement ages, and we spend some time on that one as well, which at the 50 mark. Debt free, Phil. That's my next one, number 5. Making sure different advisors are all different places when it comes to debt, but I think overall, no one's going to argue that if you can be debt free, great.
No, I mean it really comes down to, and we've talked about this before, the budget, right? You need X amount a month, or however you want to look at it, in retirement to live on. And if you have a mortgage or other debt obligations, well, then that's part of that budgeted amount, that net you need. Mm-hmm. So if you can remove that, well, yeah, you need less, but just it goes, you got to run the math, right? They kind of go hand in hand, because if you're saying, well, why don't I just take the money out of the 401k and pay off my mortgage? Well, probably not a good decision. You got to look at the tax side of it, because to get that money out of the 401k or IRA, you're going to pay taxes. And if it's a big number, could be substantial taxes to pay off the mortgage. And if the mortgage is only at 3%, does that make sense?
What do you think about the viewpoint, Phil, that when people say, well, I have the money, I want to pay off the house. And you go, well, then if you have the money to pay off the house and the stress, I guess here's the question. Mm-hmm. If I would feel better if I paid off the house, okay, right, is the way they frame the question. You still have the money to pay off the house at any time if it's sitting in those retirement accounts. Correct. So maybe train the brain to go, look, yes, technically you're still paying the mortgage, but when the math makes sense or the time is right, you got the money to pay off the house. So maybe look at it from that viewpoint versus saying, let me actually take the money out, take the penalty, pay the taxes, whatever, and then pay off the house. You still have it.
Yeah, it's like any retirement decision. Understand the pros and the cons, the math behind it, so to speak, to see here's the options. And that I walk clients through this discussion all the time, because it's one we have. Right. And the way I refer to it is, there's the head rule and the tummy rule, right? The head rule, that's the math. And I can run the math and show you, okay, no, it doesn't make sense maybe to take that money out and do it. But at the end of the day, if it's something that just keeps you up at night and gnaws at you I've got to have before I retire, I want this paid off. Well, then let's figure out how to do it. Let's just make it happen. Maybe not take a lump sum and do it. Maybe, make some larger payments and kind of spread that out over time. But if that's really something that is disturbing you and making it uneasy for you as you think of retirement and you want it paid off, then build it into the plan, make it happen.
Yeah, I guess I kind of look at it as to the initial point of, hey, if my mortgage is only 3%, right, it's super low, right? And let's say I owe $200,000 left, and I have $500,000 in my retirement accounts. I have my house paid off, right? I have the money to do it. I'm just not going to pull it because I want to try to make, Now I get though the scare becomes when the market is dropping and those retirement accounts are dropping. Then maybe that kind of changes the tummy rule. To your point, you start thinking, oh, let's pay it off before it's totally takes a dive. Yeah. So I get it, but and there's all about framework in the mind.
There's pros and cons, and exactly knowing those to maybe that helps with that framework to say, okay, well, I didn't think of it that way, or didn't understand the tax liability to do it, or whatever it is. Yeah. But have the knowledge first before you jump in and make that decision to see. I mean, personally, right now, especially in the environment we're in, I don't think it makes sense most times, especially if you have a reasonable interest rate. Right. Your mortgage payment is something that you can manage within retirement. Let's keep it there. Your assets are better off long-term, and you have more control. That's always my concern with having a house paid off. You get into retirement, your house is paid off. You spent substantial amounts of your assets to do that. Now you lost a lot of flexibility
and accumulation of that potential money.
Right. Because your house, and people sometimes, I think, don't put the dots together with a house. I mean, the house value goes up and down irregardless of what your equity is. That doesn't matter, right? Your equity, the difference between that value and the mortgage is going to be the same effectively. The thing that's changing is the house value. So having it paid off doesn't change the value.
Right. The market right now is they're through the roof.
Right. I mean, if the houses have grown substantially in value, having it paid off doesn't make any difference. You still participated in that. The bank doesn't. They get their fixed amount. So it's again just coming down to understand the pros and cons and options, then make that decision. So,
well, my next one on here kind of works with this conversation. Mm-hmm. We'll stay with this path. So if you're feeling on the fence about whether or not to pay off the house, and you're thinking, hey, the markets are dipping, and I'm losing that quote unquote money that I could be using towards the house and retirement, well, then maybe it's time to look at the risk in your portfolio, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And risk is one of those things that, as you near retirement, you're changing how your money needs to start working. I mean, it's no longer accumulation. You don't have 10 years maybe to ride through an up and a down in a market,
right?
With all the money, so you have to start understanding, well, when am I going to need, as I approach this retirement date, when am I going to start to need the money? What is it that I need? Yeah. And personally, we've talked about this a lot of times too. We bucketize money, so we'll have our soon bucket of money. That's where we're planning on spending in the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And if that's within a retirement time horizon, then even though you're not there yet, you're 5 years out, we should already have money positioned there so that it's less risky, less volatile. So that as you get there, we're not worried about, it's down 50%. Now we've got to wait 1, 2, 3 years or more to get back to even before you start growing again. So.
Yeah, and I think, Phil, the time we're in now, I mean, this is when, again, the DIYers, a lot of, look, everybody and their brother's got a podcast. Everybody and their brother's got something on YouTube. We're no different, right? But there's a lot of people who turn to these. I mean, you can learn how to do just about anything. You can YouTube it, right?
Yeah, YouTube's crazy anymore. It's awesome.
And finance is the same to a point. I think just like anything, the DIY, the accumulation, growing our wealth, making some fairly sound financial decisions, we can garner a lot of great information on the web. But at some point, I think that's when you got to turn to a pro and say, okay, I really need help figuring out how this all comes together like this, because we can do a lot of medical research on various things on how to take care of ourselves. Right. But at some point, if I got to have heart surgery, I'm just not going to do it myself.
That's right. Yeah. A little difficult to do it yourself. Number one, you probably wouldn't want to be awake.
I'm not going to reset my own bone, or whatever. So, I mean, I know that's kind of exaggeratory, but it really isn't, because money is so, I mean, it's everything in our society, in our culture.
It is. And I mean, the other role that an advisor plays that you can't is emotions, right? I mean, it's your money. There's a lot of emotions tied to your money.
Yeah.
It's not my money. So I can come in with a more objective viewpoint, like the mortgage, right? My viewpoint's completely objective. I'm showing you the facts. Here's the pros and the cons. This is the math.
Yeah.
So I can help you then work through the reasoning and the emotion, that emotional side of the decision. And that's one of the biggest advantages to an advisor, is they've just got a totally different perspective. And hopefully experience, to understand there's all these different factors to consider that you might not have heard in some YouTube or,
Yep.
Yeah. Cause it's there's a lot of moving parts in retirement. So.
A lot. And you're my sounding board, Phil. I mean, that's how I look at it. Like I changed my cardiologist. I've had open heart surgery and at a young age, and at 41, and I changed my cardiologist because I didn't feel like I had the right rapport with him. Right. Like I wanted to be able to say, look, dude, you're irking me. You're not giving me the information that I want. And I wanted him to be able to say, you're not listening to me, and you're going to kill yourself. If I wanted a bit more of the interaction that I was seeking. The prior cardiologist didn't give it to me, and not that he was a bad cardiologist by any means, but it didn't work for me.
Just different process that they went through.
And I think the same thing with a financial professional. You want someone that, for me, I'd want to be able to say, Phil, tell me I'm being an idiot. Right. And you literally, Mark, you're being an idiot. Don't do it. Right. I would be fine with that kind of, I want someone to not sugarcoat things like that for me,
Right. And that's, I have that discussion with clients early on too. It's like, look, I'm not here to be your friend, quote unquote, although I'm friends with a lot of my clients.
Absolutely.
My role in it is to give you the objective viewpoints, to say this is pros and cons. Hey, you're spending too much. We planned on this in retirement, but the reality is you've been into it 3 years now and you've overspent what we budgeted for the last 3 years. I think we need to relook this. Now you've got to understand, if you continue down this path, this is what it looks like.
And some people might hear
whatever
that,
the case is.
Some people might hear that and go, well, you're not going to tell me how to spend my money. I'm not going to live on a budget. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, if you continue, you will have real problems. I would rather hear that so I can go, whoa.
And I've had that discussion with clients, and it's, I'm not beating over the head. So you better stop it. It's like,
you're not the money police.
This is the fact. And that's what I always tell them. It's like, look, it's your money at the end of the day. I'll do whatever you want. I'll give you as many distributions as you want. I will have the discussion at some point if I think things are heading in the wrong direction.
Sure.
Because that's my obligation as a fiduciary. I have to tell you that. I can't let you just do that, and 5 years down the road, now you're out of money and you're saying, what happened? I'm like, well, you spent it all.
You're like, oh, well.
And I never told you anything along the way. Well, that's on me then to some extent. But yet I'm not going to be the money police. Right. And I mean, frankly, if it continues down that path at some point, I might just say, I don't think we're a good fit anymore. Yeah. You're not listed just like, with a doctor. We're not a good fit. You're not listening to what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You need to maybe find somebody else that can help you, which is fine. That's part of the working relationship.
It doesn't mean you're a bad client. It doesn't mean you're a bad professional. It's no longer the right fit. So we'll wrap it up with this. The countdown days to retirement. There's some things, I know we got a little off tangent, but I think it was a good conversation. Yeah. Yes, there's those list of things to do, but a crucial component is finding the right person to help you manage your retirement. And that should be on the list of things that you're counting down to as you're getting close to retirement. Hopefully you've done that soon enough that you've been working with them for a number of years to get you ready for retirement. But, many times people won't start Phil with someone until 3 or 4 or 5 years versus maybe 10. So that's okay too. If you're a garage tinkerer, I'll put it like this. I'm totally willing to go out there and pop the hood on my car because it's got a distributor cap and spark plugs. And
back to when you can actually get to it and know what
I would not attempt to look at what Phil has under his hood. You can forget it. There is no way we're tackling anything under there, because you open modern vehicles up in fancy and you're just like, what? Right?
Well, at first, usually you can't even get to it. It's like, oh, you got to take this panel off and that panel off before you, it's like, no.
My wife's battery died, and we had to change the battery on it, and you had to remove this big giant chunk of plastic under the hood hood to get to the battery.
Modern engineering. So
there you go. All right, folks, we're going to let you go. Thanks for hanging out with us this week. Don't forget to subscribe. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. Phil and I try to bring a good chat and a good dialogue about what retirement is, what it means, what it looks like, and what it's going to be for you, because you're different than me and I'm different than Phil, and so on and so forth. So have a conversation with a professional. Have a conversation with your spouse. Many times people don't do enough of that either.
Yes.
Talk to each other, talk to a professional, and find the right one for you, and work on counting down those days to retirement and some of the things that might help you. Subscribe to us, whatever platform you like to use, Apple, Google, Spotify. We're well over 100 episodes. You can check out a lot of prior content. You can watch us on YouTube. Whatever works well for you. It's a great thing to put on in the background while you're maybe baking dinner. Just play one of the videos while you're cooking something and, absorb a little knowledge along the way. So either way, we thank you for your time. Have a great one. We'll see you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts. Find it all at philstaxhacks.com.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.